Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. For the first time since September, there is no new Eagles football this week. But even on a bye week, there's no rest for this team. The Philadelphia Eagles made a trade on Wednesday to try to help improve the defense. And while there's still a few days before the trade deadline, there's definitely some additional opportunities there. And we also wanted to take a moment just to take stock of how this team has progressed over the course of the first half of the season. So, to help us do that, we're joined by the lead Eagles writer for Philly Sports Network over part of Metro Philly and a play by play broadcaster and sideline reporter for ESPN Plus, Cory Nidoh. Cory, thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Cory, let's start with the trade news that came out on Wednesday. The Philadelphia Eagles traded the New York Jets for cornerback Michael Carter. The Eagles sent John Mechie to the Jets in exchange, and the two teams swapped late round draft picks in 2027. What were your thoughts about this trade?
That Howie Roseman is always looking to improve this team, whether it's making a big splash or just fine tuning the edges of this roster, he is always looking to improve. And I think this deal that he made could potentially do just that. I know there's a lot of speculation that with this move now that it's a foregone conclusion that Cooper DeJean is now moving to the outside cornerback to play opposite of Quinyon Mitchell. I would say not so fast, to pull a Lee Corso saying there. But I do think that this gives the Eagles and Vic Fangio the flexibility now to toy with that notion a little bit more. We've seen Cooper play outside in the base defense. We saw what he did against Justin Jefferson just a couple of weeks ago, where he swatted the ball away out of a future Hall of Famer's hands. That would have been a touchdown. He can hang outside. Vic Fangio, though, has made it clear he doesn't really want to move Cooper DeJean out from the slot nickel cornerback position, but adding Michael Carter the second into the mix gives them some flexibility to kind of decide, okay, who are the best five defensive backs that we can put out there alongside Quinyon Mitchell and obviously Cooper DeJean. And I think it's a good move. I think it's a low risk and possible high reward with his track record. I know he's lost some playing time with the Jets this season. He hasn't really fit their scheme defensively. But just before last season, Joe Douglas, who, oh, by the way, is in the front office with the Eagles right now, signed Carter the second to be the highest paid slot cornerback in the league. So there's clearly some juice there. And I think the Eagles are hoping that Vic Fangio can kind of get a little bit more squeeze for it.
For sure, for sure. What do fans who are looking at this trade, they see Michael Carter coming in, they see he's coming from the Jets. You mentioned he missed a little bit of playing time this year. He's also coming from a team that just got its first win on Sunday. So obviously there may be some skepticism there. What should fans know about Carter the second as he arrives?
I mean, I think it's clear that he wants to play for the Eagles. He waived his $5 million injury clause to get the deal done. As you mentioned, the Jets just got their first win of the season, and if you're Carter, you're jumping at the bit to shift gears and get out of that locker room, get out of New York, go to a perennial powerhouse and playoff team that are the Philadelphia Eagles. And you're in a room with a lot of young studs on the defensive side. I don't know how you can't be excited if you're Carter to be ingrained with the defensive talent that's now surrounding him in Philadelphia. So I think it's going to be fun to see how this develops. I think it's a great time for the deal because he's got this extra week to get acclimated with Vic Fangio's defense. He'll be able to practice, and we know how important practice is for the grizzled veteran defensive coordinator and Vic Fangio. He tries to make it a point to say every week that practice does matter. It is important. And it's going to be important for Carter to see what he can do and showcase to the Eagles, like, hey, I can handle my own here. I just need a change of scenery, and whatever you need me to do, I'll do.
For sure. Yeah, I was really excited when that line dropped about how the fact that he was dropping his $5 million guaranteed in case of injury clause from his contract. That really says a lot about even with some of the struggles that the Eagles have experienced over the course of this first half of the season. It really says a lot about how they're viewed by other people outside of the organization as a really put as a really strong organization that people want to come to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% with that. Zadarius Smith is another example of that. I know he decided to retire, and I don't know if we'll ever find out the real reason why. If it was because Brandon Graham came back, it was somewhat out of the blue, but maybe Smith just realized he didn't have enough in the tank to make it worthwhile. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that the Eagles aren't a top destination for any free agent.
For sure, for sure. We'll come back to the trade stuff and other opportunities, but as we sit at the bye week, how are you feeling about this team?
I feel good. I think if you ask anybody, 6-2 without playing a consistent offensive game, except for maybe last Sunday against the Giants, which I think we all need to take with a grain of salt, you have to like where they're at. The first four games of the season was very tough. They go down and beat Kansas City. They hold on for dear life in the House of Horrors, that is Tampa Bay. And yeah, they lost back-to-back games and against Denver and then the quick turnaround against the Giants. And I think that Giants loss really woke this locker room up and said, whoa, like we can't just kind of roll in and expect some of these teams like the Giants to roll over, especially with what they had going on with Jackson Dart and then Cam Scatterbo, who unfortunately won't be able to play for the rest of the year. But I think it really kind of woke them up and they realized, hey, all right, like we still have to be at our best. We have to play our best, and I think that's what they did this past week against the Giants at home. And I think we all know how good this team gets after the bye week under Nick Sirianni. They just seem to turn a corner no matter where the bye week is, where they start playing their best football incrementally week by week. And Jalen Hurts and everybody in the locker room, they'll tell you you want to be playing your best football come December and January, not in or October, not in September, but as you're getting closer to these winter months. And these guys, I think, just have a good plan in place to do that. So I think I'm pleased with where they are. I think if you're a fan, you have to be pleased. Jalen Hurts looks like he's been able to figure everything out. And yeah, it's a little conservative at times, but 15 touchdowns to one interception and winning games is hard to argue.
For sure, for sure. You wrote a piece for Philly Sports Network, doing your superlatives midway through the season. You called the Eagles' offensive inconsistency the biggest surprise of the first half of the season. Why would you say that that element of the team, and why would you say that that would be the biggest surprise of the season at this juncture?
Well, the biggest, I think it was because Kevin Patullo was handpicked by Nick Sirianni as the in-house candidate, and he saw how this offense worked last year under Kellen Moore. So to me, it made a little of a head-scratching move for me where it was, why aren't these guys clicking? Now, I know they didn't play in the preseason, so I kind of give the offense a 3 to 4 week buffer in September. But when those games in early October came around, they look so good. They'd have a 12 play, 75-yard touchdown drive, and then they would go 3-and-out for the next five series and go to the half. And to me, it was just where how can we have this part of the offense look so good, and then all of a sudden it looks like they don't know what football is. They had procedural penalties. They just had weird play calling, runs up against stacked boxes, and it just didn't make sense to me with all the talent that they have offensively that it took this long to get going with somebody that was in-house opposed to hiring somebody that was outside like they did with Kellen Moore, where it took more a little while to understand what clicked and what worked for this offense. So that's kind of why I said that was the biggest surprise. I thought the offense would have taken off a little bit sooner this year with Patullo just because of the consistency and his familiarity with all the guys and all the trust that we heard the players had in KP during training camp. But I think they've started to figure it out. And again, they've got that extra time now with the bye week to really hammer it in.
For sure, for sure. And as much as that inconsistency has been present, Jalen does seem to be having a stellar first half of the season as well. I mean, he's got a 70% pass completion, 15 passing and 5 rushing touchdowns to 1 interception. I saw something online recently where people are already starting to suggest that he should be in the MVP conversation, which it may be a little early for that conversation to heat up, just generally speaking. But what are your thoughts about Jalen's performance over the course of these first few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, he's on a killer pace right now over the last 6 weeks. You mentioned the touchdowns, 15 passing touchdowns to just 1 interception over the last 6 games. And he didn't throw a touchdown pass in each of the first 2 games, which they won. So it doesn't matter the way Jalen Hurts plays. They've been able to find ways to win. And sometimes that frustrates a lot of people. It frustrates fans. And oh, well, why isn't he throwing for 350 yards like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow when he's healthy? They don't need him to, but he's shown that he can turn it on and sling it when he needs to. I thought the best example was at Minnesota a couple weeks ago, where in that second half, him and Devontae Smith just kind of took over that game and said, "All right, hey, we're going to win this thing." And then he was able to connect with AJ Brown on a couple of deep passes. That third down pass to AJ was beautiful. And for Jalen to be able to consistently win, I think that's all fans should care about. They shouldn't care about what it looks like because at the end of the day, he's shown in the biggest games of his career, both Super Bowls against the Chiefs, that he can rise to the occasion. And he outplayed Patrick Mahomes in this last Super Bowl. And I would argue that he almost outplayed Mahomes in the first one, too, against the Chiefs. So I think that Jalen Hurts has been a phenomenal quarterback for this team. His winning mantra, his winning ways just absolutely trickle throughout the entire locker room. And I think he's the perfect fit for this team.
Yeah, it really feels like the locker room has really unified behind him in a way that maybe isn't apparent if you're just kind of like watching the team on game days. And you mentioned the Minnesota game too, the perfect passer rating he had at that game, the first time in his career that he had that really stood out. Um, I will say, as we switch over, I do want to revisit the defense there as well, because one of the things that surprised me about the defense as I was taking a look at it was actually how low they are in the rankings. Last season, they finished the season like best in pretty much any statistic that you could think of on defense. But this year, that you look at the numbers halfway through the season, they're 20th in the league in yards allowed. 19th in rushing yards allowed, 18th in the league in passing yards allowed, 336.3, 120.4, and 215.9, respectively. Should fans be concerned about this defense at this juncture?
I don't think so. I think Vic Fangio should have the trust of everybody because I was concerned about the defense last year with Vic Fangio, all the younger and unproven players, and look what happened. I mean, you're not going to get Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell performances like that in every draft class. And I think we're seeing that here this year where Jahad Campbell has been solid. He's the second favorite to win the league's Defensive Rookie of the Year award at this moment. Drew Makuba has flashed at times, but he also has struggled at times. So I think that this defense is still trying to find its way. I do think Howie Roseman maybe bought in a little too much on some of these younger guys who really popped near the end of last season and helped in that playoff run. Milton Williams leaving, Josh Sweat, we all kind of knew Sweat was going to go get his money. Darius Slay, a veteran cornerback who some were like, okay, thanks for what you did, but we're ready to move on. But some of those pieces were really important and vital to what made that defense so good last year. So I think there's a lot of these younger guys that are just still getting their feet wet. Moro Ojomo looks really good. He leads the team with 4 sacks. Jalix Hunt is starting to come on into his own. We know about Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Quinyon and DeJean have been great as well. So I don't think they have to be worried about it. I know the numbers don't look great, but I think over time, as the season progresses, they will probably finish within the top 10, I would say, in some of those categories. I don't know if they'll be a top 5 defensive unit like they were last year, but they're good enough where when they need to make plays, they're able to find ways, and they're getting reinforcements. Nolan Smith's coming back. Hopefully Azeez Ojulari can get back on the field. So there's a couple of guys that are waiting in the wings. Jacorian Bennett, we still really haven't seen what he's been able to do at the cornerback position. So there's some in-house reinforcements, and who knows how he still has until next Tuesday to make another deal if he wants.
For sure, for sure. Is there any other area, since you brought up the trade deadline, is there any other area you would expect or hope for Howie to maybe pursue as the trade deadline nears?
I mean, I think the easiest answer or the most obvious is edge, just because they're so light and they're working out Campbell. Obviously, he pass rushed when he was at Alabama, but I've been saying this for a few weeks now, but I think Bradley Chubb from Miami, who you can watch tonight on Thursday Night Football, I think he could be a great fit. He's a veteran. You put him behind the defensive line for the Eagles. He played under Vic Fangio. He had one of his best seasons when he was playing with Fangio. So I think that could be a move, especially if Miami loses to Baltimore. I don't see how they're not selling and kind of cleaning house because it seems like it's getting a little disastrous down there, although they just beat up on the Atlanta Falcons on the road. So the NFL never makes much sense to me, Joe. But, the Dolphins, I think they should be sellers at the deadline, and I think Chubb would be a nice add. So that's my, top guy, if you will. But I could see how he may be getting another middle pack guy where it's not going to move the needle and fans might be a little frustrated, but somebody that might be able to pop here and there.
All right. And looking ahead to the second half of the season, what do you see as the biggest challenge for this team, and what excites you about this team?
Biggest challenge, I think, is they play some pretty good quarterbacks, down the stretch here. Guys that can torch defenses if they are given enough time. So I think they're going to have to figure out how to create more pass rush, whether it's sending some extra guys or they have that almost like fake looking pressure and they only end up sending four to the simulated pressures to kind of confuse the quarterbacks. But I think they've got a little bit of a tough stretch here. I think Green Bay is going to be a great litmus test coming out of the bye, Monday Night Football. The other thing in that same regard, they only have right now only one more 1 o'clock game. Every other game right now listed as prime time. And that could kind of take a toll on a team. You're not in the normal routine that you're used to, that you had in the majority of the first half of the season. So we'll see how the guys handle it. Those would be my two biggest challenges or concerns. Is they've still got some good teams coming down the pike here where their schedule doesn't totally lighten up. What I'm excited most about, I think, just to see how this offense continues to progress. I think there was a lot of good signs in that Giants game, but as I mentioned earlier, got to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. The secondary for New York, not very good. Front seven, pretty respectable, but let's see what they do against a Green Bay defense that has better talent. Micah Parsons, is going to be hungry to make a big splash in that game. So let's see how the offensive line plays. That's, I think, the most important part for me is can they get on that consistent level? They have been a little up and down this season. And I don't think a lot of people want to admit that because let's face it, we all love the offensive line. We all love Jeff Stoutland. They've been so good. It's hard to criticize them. But if you hear some of the guys like Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, they've said it after games like, hey, we're just not playing the way we should. I mean, Mailata said that he played his worst game against the Giants in that Thursday night game. So, I mean, these guys recognize that they need to be better. And that's a good sign of a team that's mature enough to understand that and a team that's willing to make the sacrifices and putting the effort to get better.
Perfect. Well, Cory, again, I appreciate you taking the time. You can always check out Cory at Philly Sports Network, which is part of the Metro Philly Network. You can also check him out on ESPN Plus and on all of the socials. So, Cory, again, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go, Eagles!